What's the general dummy operation? How about that? I would. Okay, not only would I'd actually like a lot of first off, I think not only is that necessary, but what I'm saying is not and I feel like I mean, not to be like that, but I'm sure it's more marketable and desirable, like not to be
Dog. Well, oh, dog. Well, hand me that guitar. Hand me that guitar, dog. Let's get this show on the road. Here's one you'll know. That is. Hello, everybody. It's me, Demi D, your MC. We are here tonight having a really, really fun special event. Of course, this is our last stream in a little bit. We are taking a bit of a break for Christmas. Got a week-long thing going up. It's so great to see so many people on YouTube and Twitch and everywhere else. It's seriously such a pleasure. Today, again, is a really, really exciting event. We've got the amazing Tofu I'm going to bring on in just a second. We've got a dual webcam setup. My webcam's a little bigger, okay? Don't feel like I'm inflating my importance. Okay, in fact, it's very much the opposite. Tofu was really the star of the show when it came to what we accomplished. Just 2 weeks ago. I can't believe how crazy that is. Let me go ahead and bring it up. And hello to everybody. I'm sorry we have a ton of people who have checked in. Normally, I take a second to greet each and every single one of you individually, but I do want to respect the time of our very good friend right here. Take a look, everybody. This is the man, the myth, and give me just a second, Tofu. I got to get the headphones on so that you can be heard as well. This is me being a hashtag pro streamer. You know, I've been at it for almost 2 years now. It's gonna be 2 years in a month, and I'm always getting humbled by OBS. That is for sure. Okay, how are you, my friend?
Changes.
That right? Okay, and I'm gonna bump you up a little bit too. Okay, try saying something again, Tofu.
Hello.
How is that? How's the audio? How's that for everybody at home? I can hear him just fine with my headphones on, but definitely want to check in on everybody here to make sure that he sounds good. How's everybody? Can we get a little chat confirmation? Because I can do a little more tweaking too if that's necessary. Audio's fine. Okay, everyone's saying it. Awesome.
All right.
Okay. Well, hello to you, Tofu. Obviously, we got a chance to really meet and get to know each other a few weeks back. But for folks who are on our stream right now and might not know who you are, is there maybe something you can share about us?
Sure. So, Tofu, full name, or online name anyway, Good Tofu Friday. I think a lot of people in the Mega Man community know me for making the dip chips or just being really involved in hardware-related projects. And then I guess more recently, specifically the cell phone games and the arcade game, obviously.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just a big proponent of preservation in general.
Could not. I think that's such an important goal for anyone in any field, no matter what it is. Video games are art, and they absolutely deserve to be preserved. My question for you, and for everyone else at home as well, what is it about Battle Network? What was, what sort of, gripped you and made you think, okay, I want to be making dip chips. I want to be really taking an active stand here. What is it about Battle Network as a franchise that really gets you?
So I started with the series since day one. When it came out back in 2000, I had my father got me the first game on Game Boy. So I've been a fan for the longest, literally the longest you could possibly be a fan. And then
suffered through BN1, if I could just chime in and say, that's, as a kid, I can't imagine what that was like. I'm sure in some ways we were more forgiving, and in some ways it was probably like really obtuse figuring out what to do. But like, props to you for being captivated from BN1 and keeping that going.
I will say the maps were a challenge until I memorized them.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
So I would say 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. At this point, there was I wasn't really into the battle chips all that much. I just liked playing the games. I wasn't even too aware that there was a proper way to play the battle chips, besides the PET toy. But friend Eurasia and Midnight started talking about how the chips, they had the not the advanced chips, the link chips. They're the navis, that the data was deleting itself, and how they had batteries, and they showed me pictures of the chips, and I thought, that looks too small to have a battery in. Is it a problem just to buy another one? And they told me what they all go for on eBay, and I saw this like well, not number one seller. I forget what the meme was now, if you remember.
I think I know you're talking about the really notorious scalper. Are you talking about there? Because so again, for the folks at home, again, I think prices have been a lot better in more recent years. But there was definitely one guy in particular, even before I really got into battle chips. I used to think battle chips were the most expensive hobby in the entire world, because you go on eBay and it's like asking $400 for like a Gundel Soul or something, and you're like, okay, that's crazy. I'm not. Is that what you're thinking about?
Yeah. So I saw those prices. I was like, that is absolutely insane. These things can't be that complicated to figure out and just make your own of. So from there, I said, all right, I'm just gonna sit down with these, have the community help me out, and figure out how they work. Ended up making a whole map of them, and made the literal chips that have dip switches on them. That now you can just use those instead. They're pretty cheap, and now I think. Obviously, I'm not going to say a result of me only, but chips have gotten a lot cheaper, thankfully, overall. And I like the fact of just being able to give somebody the opportunity to play any of the chips, so they don't have to spend like over $1,000 to have, probably more than $1,000 to have a full library.
Honestly, I could not agree more with you. I feel like as a collector, I'm very like particular. Like I really like I prefer to have like the real chips, because there's a feeling of that. But also at the same time, there are so many unreleased chips that were never made, right? And talk about a great technology when it comes to producing something that just literally should exist and just never did. That was something I know that I think I first encountered you, I want to say back in like maybe 2018 or 2019, producing the advanced chips that have never been made. And I thought, wow, what a quality product. Like, this is somebody who really, put in a lot of time. And actually, and again, not to toot Tofu's horn here, very affordable. I don't think that you were really, you were not charging a crazy price at all. I felt like it was a super fair experience, and you got to make chips that never got. I was very impressed. So just to to toot your horn a little bit, I was very very impressed by that. Now that's kind of fun though, talking about those link chips. So if you guys don't know, and maybe if I were a smart enough person, I would have prepped a few things to show you at the moment. But in Battle Network 6, there are real life link chips that obviously use sword, wide sword, long sword, all these, almost every chip in the game. You insert them in to various systems, including the arcade machine, and then you have your Navi data chips, which, as you said, have some sort of way to save data. Now you're saying is it not a battery? Because this is I'm not an expert when it comes to like the interior of the chips, but how do those work?
So yeah, it's not a battery. It's a very tiny chip that has this. It's like like the same thing the Game Boy Advance games use in order to save data, just a lot smaller, since it's not saving an entire game's history worth.
Interesting.
So they're physically it's just too small to really have a battery in, which is why I figured that. I mean, they didn't know any better. If you don't know, you don't know, right?
Yeah, you would.
But,
I would assume
yeah.
the same. I would have assumed a battery for sure. I would not have thought anything different. Yeah.
So when I saw it, I was like, "There's probably a way to, if not restore the data, to at least like copy one that exists that works already, and just it's called flashing data, flash it onto another one, in order to fix it."
Now, and this is please forgive me. This could be a very silly question that would expose my lack of technical knowledge, which is vast. I do not know a lot about technology. When you talk about flashing and saving that data, is that a similar concept to what was done with the Battleship Stadium and the Metal Operation arcade machines? Is that a similar concept, or is that something very different?
Half and half. So for the Metal Operation, it was basically the exact same thing. It has a chip, has a lot of pins on it, has a type of stored memory that isn't directly accessible normally through, like, it's not USB compatible, for example. And so you have a special device that can talk to that chip and pull its data off and put it into a file that a computer can recognize. But for BCS, while it also did have that component as Metal Operation does, it also had these flashcards. This is a similar game called Pingu. It would come on. This is not going to focus it. It would come on.
I'm gonna chime in and say Pingu has been like such a meme in my head. You know, it's like this is totally random, like penguin game.
Yeah.
You know, that just has been like a total lifesaver in terms of like
Seriously.
practicing, you know, data archival and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Pingu's great.
It's I'll finish this real quick. So yeah, the other data is on a flash card, which is similar to like USB. I'm just going to use layman's terms. I'm not going to get too detailed.
Do, yeah.
Yeah,
do.
you can think of it as just like a USB device, but there's a particular way you have to pull the data off. Otherwise, you might corrupt the data.
Interesting.
If you don't do it exact specific way.
Yeah.
Mostly due to arcade formatting and how it reads it.
Well, and I know that was a great source of stress. Obviously for you as the person who really was extracting, but and also for me as somebody, you know, I wouldn't call myself a control freak, but there's definitely this feeling of like, oh my gosh, like we raised all this money, we're in the and there was nothing, like there was just no way I could help in any way. It's like, okay, I just have to trust Tofu, have to trust the process, have to trust that all those, you know, the purchases for Pingu and boards and things like that, you know, kind of came together, and it did. Spoilers, you know, obviously we haven't made the video yet, but spoilers, it did go well. But also not as perfect as it could have, right? And maybe we can talk more about that.
Sure. So you know how? So everybody has a name. These devices also have a name, but there's a particular way to read those names. It's not just plug it in and like Windows says, "Hey, this is what this thing is called." It has a serial number sort of thing going on. The device that I had, unfortunately, wasn't able to read that name. As far as what that means for emulation, really it means nothing. The game, as there's some pictures out there now, can be emulated to a degree. But what it means for submitting the dump, as it's called, of the data to MAME database, for example, it's going to read as a bad dump.
And let me just take a second to chime in and say, MAME, I don't know what it stands for at the top of my head, but that is like basically the premier arcade emulator, right? Like that's the program. If you know, people at home, you know, want to actually play, you know, the Battleship Stadium or the Metal Operation, this is most likely the interface they'd be using. So I just wanted to chime in and talk a little bit about that too. But I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah, no. So, well, along with MAME, there's another emulator called Demule, which a lot of people aren't really too familiar with.
Yeah, I've never heard of that personally. Yeah.
I haven't brought this up before, but Demule is sort of Dreamcast, but not really. It's more of a Sega kind of emulator, and that's because these Capcom boards have similar hardware to the what are they called again? There's some Sega arcades that the name of it is escaping me right now, but they share similar hardware. So as a result, the guys who are working on this were able to get those images and everything up in that emulator in particular.
Oh, okay. So
Naomi, thank you, dearest. Yeah,
Naomi.
so
Yeah.
it's similar to Naomi.
Okay.
Naomi 2 particularly.
Okay. And I guess because that emulator is focused on a certain type of hardware, and you're saying the Mega Man machines, obviously Capcom and Sega are different companies, but you're saying it's similar enough that the more Sega focused emulator was able to read it in a different kind of way.
Yes.
Oh, very, very.
That's essentially it. Yeah, and then I mean, Capcom and Sega collaborate a lot on their hardware. It's not too surprising.
Oh, that's cool.
Like a lot of the I will just leave it at that. Yeah, so Capcom and Sega collaborate a lot on their arcade machines as of late. It's like call it like 2004 onward.
Yeah. Well, I want to chime in and share a question that Zeta Slow in the chat asked. What data format was the raw data off the card? He's assuming FAT32. I'm not familiar with data formats, but
so it's not FAT32. It's for layman's terms, it's essentially an arcade specific kind of format. So if you were to plug it into a computer of any type, even Linux, it wouldn't be able to do anything with that data. Linux would just Linux is another operating system, by the way. Linux would just tell you, I don't know what to do with this, but if you want to copy the data, we can try. Windows would, which is the scary thing, is Windows would say, hey, I don't know what that is. I'm gonna write a little bit of data on it to try and read it, and then gonna ask you, do you want to format it? Which
is that what would cause the basically the irrevocable corruption? That's
correct.
What would cause the. Ooh, yeah, that's very scary.
So we were able to avoid that. Nothing got written over on the card, and thus ruining the data entirely. Didn't format it by pressing yes.
That's yeah. Which I'm sure we can joke and be like, yeah, that's probably an easy thing to not do that, but also like, oh my gosh, right? Like I'm sure at any moment, in all the simulations and the practice that gets done, who knows at the end of the day what you actually do end up. We have a lot of documentation and ideas, but maybe, in fact, actually, that's a great question. Were there any challenges that you experienced in the moment that were kind of unforeseen?
Thankfully, nothing unforeseen, but that was really due to thanks to being obsessive to an autistic degree on how all of this, how all these devices work, and a lot of that was doing research purely on the Japanese side of the internet, because these arcade machines that have similar hardware to BCS weren't ever released in America, so there's nothing in English really in order to look them up. I mean, there's some sites that purported to know what hardware the BCS was using, and that was entirely wrong. I even emailed that guy and said, hey, that actually is incorrect. He still hasn't updated his site, so I don't know what's up with that. But it took a lot of research in order to know what we're doing, and also very grateful to Emmanuel to sharing the photo of the panel taken off, which let me be able to discover what it was using.
Yeah, I think that was huge, and that's I'm sure from Emmanuel's, which by the way to everyone in the chat, Emmanuel is the collector. He was the person located in France who had both of these machines, and really another star of the show who really just allowed something like this to happen. Thank goodness something like that because I'm sure he was very nervous to like really tinker too much, right? To really to I mean I personally would too, right? I would be very afraid as a layman to like open up the machine and like fiddle with things and be afraid of like a cable or something getting loose. But thank goodness that like that was a really reasonable request that like was super helpful, right? That was something that was it
was everything. It literally opened the door.
It did literally open
quite literally.
Oh, I love that. No, that's great. So we've got a question from Pockfire up in here, actually a few. He asked, what was the condition of the game when it was acquired? And were there any specific challenges you faced with its state, which I'm assuming is related to the condition of it?
So we did two arcades. One of them was BCS. That one, I mean, Emmanuel's the one who purchased it, let's say 10 or so years ago, and he bought it in perfect condition, it looks like. So by the time we got to it, it was still in perfect working condition, so there was nothing unexpected that happened when taking it apart. So I'm familiar with arcade machines in general, and I'm familiar with taking things apart, so even though I had never messed with that arcade in particular, it wasn't really a problem. The only shocking part was how physically small it was. Actually, walked right by it and didn't realize like, oh, that's the arcade machine right there.
Especially because it was like, I think it was backward, right? Like the
Yeah,
way it was
it was
facing from the
backwards.
staircase. I had a similar feeling myself too, which again, that's a fun moment for the footage when we get that video out. But and just to chime in again, the Battle Chip Stadium machine was very small, and the metal operation was like very big. It was like such a funny dichotomy between those two. Yeah, and would you say there were specific challenges with it in that state, or?
No, not
Yeah,
not
because you knew
yeah.
what to expect, and you had done enough practice.
Mhm.
I see another question out here, and that is, do you think this is from Shiny Volp? Tofu,
Yeah.
do you think custom content could be possibly created for BCS?
Yes. As right now the compression format. So like if you guys have ever messed with something called a zip file, it's a compressed file. When you open it up, then you have full access to that file. There's an arcade specific version that Capcom used for this, and it's known to some degree that's how the videos were able to be pulled out and some of the images. And there's further work on figuring out how the rest of it works. Once that's figured out and you know how the format works, then yeah, it's possible to create new content for it. You could change the images for the chips. If for the 3D models, if they do turn out to be videos or models, you could just create exact copies. Let me roll that back. You could create your own model that would be the same file size as the existing one and kind of swap it in to show your own thing.
Wow.
So I do think replacing content is possible. Maybe adding additional content to it. I don't know. That's going to depend on the people taking it apart to say yes or no.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, because I'll be honest with you, I kind of didn't, that was not something on my radar. You know, certainly the idea of like maybe a localized version, like a version that would not be in Japanese in terms of like text on the screen and battle chips on the screen. Like that was something that I think like that seems like a reasonable goal. That doesn't seem like, you know, a crazy ask, but the idea of just straight up swapping models and assets, I think is pretty wild actually. That's a really fun thought right there.
And that's something that is some people did, like Zully started it, replacing images that are in the link chips, so that when you slot it into the link PET, rather than the images that Capcom loaded into there, you could actually just load up your own images and it'll show that instead.
Wow. Yeah, that's really
And,
cool.
and in that case, you can't add data to it, but you can certainly replace it.
That is, yeah, that's wild. Again, I'm such a layman that just hearing what is and isn't possible will always get a good reaction out of me. But the idea of that is, I think, really, really fascinating. All right, we got ZLD Slim. Hello, how are you, my friend? Tofu, hey, first off, wanted to say thanks for your efforts. You guys really did something incredible with the project. I was curious what your background is that made you able to complete this amazing feat.
Sure. So I'm an IT administrator here in New York, but I've been into tech since I was in the 4th grade. It's going to sound like BS, but I promise you, it started with we had a science class, we had a battery and a light bulb, literally put the two together, literally saw the light, and from there I've been really into technology and kind of just always been diving myself into it. Another influence back in the day was a guy called Ben Heckendorn. He's not as active these days, but he's still around. And watching his content from very early YouTube, even pre-YouTube, I really wanted to do what he does.
He was like was he specifically arcades, or was he?
No, so his stick when he was really getting big was that he would take like an Xbox or a GameCube, PS2, whatever have you, and turn them into laptops. And then he would just sell those laptops to people, and they were like proper laptops. Like he'd machine the casing, he'd modify the boards and the screens, and it would be just a proper laptop. When you opened it up, you'd have your controller right there, and you could play it on the go. And so being able to do that, I thought was really fascinating. Prior to that, this is New York City. People are throwing out stuff all the time, so I would find a computer in the street, I would take it home, take it apart, figure out how it worked, and that was kind of just an extension from that.
Is restoration something that would ever interest you? Like the idea of taking, I don't know, broken consoles like that and trying to make them work? Is that something?
That's what I do to this day. Before I had the job I currently have, which I've been there like 11 years or so now, my side gig was just buying broken things on eBay or going to thrift
Love
shops and
that.
finding broken stuff, fixing them up, modifying them, and selling them. And I still do that. I have my name on other projects on the internet for reverse engineering different sound cards or other work for the purpose of preservation or restoration. And you can see just this background of stuff
Yeah.
is also in line with that.
Yeah. No, that's I'm just gonna chime in and say that's an amazing skill set to have, and it's amazing to have someone like you who's very passionate about the things that you are, and not only that you have the skill set, but you also have the interest in like learning more and pushing more. For me, on again, as more of an observer kind of perspective, in our the group DMs and things, I was always very impressed by like the sort of active solicitation of like, let's talk to a guy who knows this. Like, does anyone know someone from Korea? Like very, very hands-on involved, which I think is just amazing and super cool. I wish that I had like enough knowledge myself to like know the steps in advance of like what it takes, but I'm always happy to help in, the capacity that I can. I think everyone's got their roles, which is always cool. Pockfire had a second question. Can you walk us through the restoration process in detail? What were the tools and techniques that you used?
I'm going to assume for dumping the BCS game or
exactly,
saving the data.
Yeah.
So no restoration work was needed on it. It worked perfectly fine. The only unknowns that weren't imperative to know was something called a daughter board. So you have this thing called a motherboard. This is the actual board that would have been used in BCS. This is just a version of it. Let me try and get it completely in frame here.
Yeah. Oh, it's
So I literally have at work I have a page open on Yahoo Japan Auctions that has the word Capcom and arcade. So every morning I'm looking to see has a new listing come up with this board, because it's so specific that if I put in its model number, it'll never come up.
Interesting.
So, remind me of the question, please.
Yeah, just the process, like the tools that you may have used or something.
So the main items that were needed to dump it, I'll show them real quick. I've got them sitting here. Yeah. Sorry about that. So we got this, which is a compact flash to IDE adapter. You'd put I'm going to use Pingu as the forever example here.
We love Pingu. We need to get a Pingu emote.
So you put Pingu inside of the compact flash adapter, and then from this IDE connector, which is an old kind of computer hard drive connector, to USB, that would allow me to connect it to a computer and use some custom software in order to save the data. That's from the compact flash, which is where all of the audio and images and everything are stored. And then these chips here are the additional like flash ROMs that I had to download. What they do is tell the motherboard how to interact with the data on the compact flash. And I needed this device, which is this is like your hobbyist level programmer with a adapter board on it. And that would let me download the data on those ROMs onto a computer as well.
Yeah.
Those are really the only tools you need. That, a screwdriver, and kind of an understanding on arcade machines in general. Let's say like 8 years ago, I was extremely into an arcade platform called Neo Geo. I would repair those boards, and so from my experience with Neo Geo arcade machines, and also I repair CRT, I repair a bit of everything, so also repairing CRTs, I'm very familiar with the general makeup of arcade machines.
Wow. Yeah, those are my eyes lit up when you said that, because that's like that was such a part of my childhood, those old machines, and that's like I don't know, there's something about them I think that just because and if I can just say, I feel like probably most of us in the chat are probably at an age where like there's a bit of a nostalgia pining, and I think there's something about an arcade machine, right? There's something about the idea of like putting in your quarters and playing a flashy game in a social environment. I think just hits really close to home, right? That's and talk about I don't want to say they're dying because I know a lot of there's a lot of new machines that come out, but like when it comes to the old and retro stuff, that really that takes, it requires maintenance. It requires a very special set of skills. So like thank goodness there are people like you who are very like that are thinking about that, who have like a love for it and have the ability to potentially restore a lot of these machines that would otherwise be lost to time. That's
what I like to do. Old computers as well, or older game consoles, some lesser known ones. A lot of times I'll birch it. There's a recent case I got a little bit of infamy/fame on Twitter because I took a really old computer card, and I had, this is a random one sitting here, but a lot of these old computer cards have this something called an edge connector.
I love that you have that just sitting here. That's
As what a lot of people do these days is they'll take these, they'll rip that edge off and just recycle it for the gold and then throw the card out.
No.
I try my best to save them, and so I found a really not like a moderately rare card, and went through the laborious process of reconnecting a connector onto it. And it's not like it was especially rare, but the idea in my head is that it's been saved and it can be used in the future, if not by me, by somebody else. I'm more interested in saving the hardware.
There's got to be someone out there, right, who's got to be, oh my gosh.
Oh,
whoa,
wow.
Okay, wow. That was, okay. I'm sorry, I got to take a quick salute.
Yeah, no problem.
To our good friend Cito.
Whoa.
That's crazy. I love you so much. Thank you so. Wow, that's actually crazy. I'm sorry, that just kind of threw me off a little bit. But I think that's kind of a fun thing to think of too, that like for us in our community, we love Battle Network so much. I'm sure there are people out there, who in a different niche that are like very much into like specific hardware, and to think that there are people out there who can like make a name for themselves taking care of that, I think is really, really cool. Okay, so another question from Zeta Slow. Was the license key a physical device, or was it a software key like a file to verify that it was an actual board?
So it's not really a license key, it's more of an identifier, which more or less the same thing really, I guess. But it is completely software based, and even more than that, it's solely stored in like a separate sector in this compact flash card, so it's not even normally readable by Windows. That's why the adapter I had wasn't able to read that correctly. It could for some other compact flash cards, but whatever Capcom did to theirs, my adapter and one that Enzon purchased for us. I think it was Enzon, right?
Probably.
That purchased another one for us and got it for us in time. Unfortunately, also had the same issue where it just couldn't read that special sector correctly. So DJ Rez, sorry. Well, it couldn't read that special sector that Capcom did, unfortunately. So I would need to buy another one that this application was specifically built with, and it would still only probably read it.
Interesting. I know we had talked in person a little bit about the potential of like Emmanuel shipping some component to you. Is that something that's still being talked about, or is that something that's maybe prioritized in a different way?
I don't think it's necessary. The only case where we would, if we really, really wanted the dump to be labeled as good on the MAME scene, would be then we would want to go ahead and do that. The other possible case, let me go back. I prefer that he didn't, only because it's not impossible that at some point I'd have to go back and actually dump the data for some other chips that were on there. They were specifically on the chip readers for the battle chips. I didn't have hardware to remove the chips on the boards for that in order to read the data, and they're not absolutely required because the guy who's working on the emulation is a genius and was able to work around that. But it would be better to have that thing.
And if I can ask you more about that, we took this genius individual. Maybe can you share a little bit about him and maybe the skill set that he has that when it comes to maybe fully making things extracted and playable?
So the most I can say, I want to keep his identity.
Oh, for sure.
Totally. To himself. But He is a very, 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 very high level member of the emulation community in general, especially with arcade machines. And he is extremely, like, he's the programmer for this hardware that BCS is on. So he's the person to be talking to about anything related to the hardware that BCS runs on. And because of that, since he's so familiar with it, some of the hardware check for that Complex Flash Card ID bypassed it no problem. The hardware check for the chip reader bypassed that no problem. He's able to kind of emulate the functionality, but because these guys are also preservationists, their interest is in preserving the hardware as it was, not just kind of hacking their way around it. So they would prefer to have the programming that's in those chips for the battle chip readers.
Okay, so it's actually, because I know we had kind of talked a little bit up, like, you know, maybe a bad dump is maybe more of just like a label and not necessarily like, you know.
In this case, it's like entirely just a label, because the dump is perfectly workable, readable, playable as far as it can be played right now.
But then you're talking about the potential of maybe returning to like get a final bit of data. Is that what the?
Yeah, because it would require soldering iron, desoldering stuff, and I would need real equipment to be able to do that properly.
Oh wow, yeah. I would hope I hope that it wouldn't come down to that, because I know obviously the risk of stuff is pretty scary, but I have a feeling that Emmanuel is like pretty. He seemed very you know attached and you know kind of gung ho about making it as good as possible. So you know you never know. I mean, and if that's what it comes down to, you know, like gang. Spoilers, we still have a budget, you know, so like if it did need to come down to that, I don't think that's something that's crazy at all. So,
and then for desoldering and things of that nature, for me, that I could do that with my eyes closed. It's not a problem for me. So that part actually doesn't make me nervous at all.
That's good. As an amateur, soldering is like that's what scares me from like actually trying to like, you know, trying my hand at like restoration or you know even just like GBA backlight mods and stuff. But yeah, but that's. Glad to hear that. That's actually really great, and I'm not surprised to hear that either. Okay, so on a different note, we got Leo from YouTube asking, would it be possible to make consoles that could be played using the RIP data?
Like like an arcade machine, I suppose.
I think he's implying like someone's like maybe on a Raspberry Pi, like some sort of like a makeshift cabinet, like some sort of homebrew cabinet. Now, I can chime in and say it would need, like, if you wanted the full experience, that'd be pretty difficult because there's a lot of, like, external chip reader slots and things like that. It would be hard, but I don't think it's impossible. I don't want to speak for you. It would require, like, a good effort, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely not impossible at all, especially with having images of how all the hardware works. If we wanted to do something like a hardware simulation, Zully, he's not as active any longer, but he did create an application that is able to read chips on the computer. So having something like that interact with Demule would probably be the way to go on a computer, and then you could put it in a custom cabinet and have it look like it's working like BCS. So that'd probably be the best way you could go about it. Whether the programmers for Demule or MAME are interested in that, that's a question for them. That's not something that I know how to do. I'm more a hardware guy. So if they say, hey, here the software is done, here's you could load it onto a chip and assemble the hardware, that I can do no problem. I can even make boards no problem. The software side of it is where I unfortunately don't have too much input on where they want to go.
Yeah, and it seems like that's a very like esoteric kind of knowledge. Like that's like something that's probably tough to find a lot of people who are like it's probably that community. So so it would kind of maybe ultimately fall on them to sort of like set those parameters, it seems.
Yeah, and then they're such. I'm not going to speak for everybody in that community, but I would say the general feel is that they're more interested in preserving the arcade machine as it was in software entirely. So whether they would write something to work physically with hardware, I wouldn't hold your breath, but it's not impossible. And especially if you can find somebody who's willing to do that, there are people who just take things as a challenge. So
Yeah, super interesting. And honestly, I think, there's I don't know if there were many communities that are more tech literate than Battle Network, right? I'm sure many people were inspired by the games growing up. Technology is such a core asset of those games that I feel like maybe, you never know. There might be some people out there who are interested in that challenge, as you said. We got Guardian Shaw asking, is there any insight on future uses of chips in the emulator, kind of like the Chipgate homebrew for GBA? So I think this is asking about just emulating, chips on maybe like the MAME side.
For me, anyway, I'm trying to make a hardware clone of the gates for the Game Boy Advance. I have some success with it, but I need some extra help. So I'm going to go a little bit into the sound emulation for the arcade, actually, with this question, since they're kind of related. There is a guy in the Netherlands who has graciously taken on the process of something called decapping, where you dip chips, where you dip. Let me bring out an example. This is the sound chip on this arcade machine. It's a Yamaha chip, but it's not been fully explored, I think is the best layman way to put it. So what you have to do is put it in acid, a type of acid that's very toxic, in order to expose the actual chip inside of it, because that's just a plastic epoxy that protects the actual data that goes back and forth in a little square chip.
Wow.
And he's also going to do the gates. I'm sending him 2 gates to also put in acid so that we can get a close-up shot on how those chips work. So then I and others will be able to see how they operate better and how to maybe pull up the data. Since my hardware emulation of the gate sort of works, but has trouble talking to the Game Boy. But that's something that I'm working on. I don't know if there's anybody else really working anymore on chips after the gate emulator for Game Boy came out.
Gotcha. Yeah. I have another question, or let's see. I guess I just lost it. Megamage is asking, is the software just going to be archived, or are you planning on making it playable for everyone?
So the data that was dumped will be made available for everybody as it is. And as far as the playable version, the guy who does the demule programming and all that, demule being one of the emulators, he's going to be the one that ultimately releases an update to the application that'll have support for the game in it. And that's on his schedule. So whenever he feels ready to release that update, because the update's going to come with updates for other games as well. It's not just for Mega Man. So it's entirely up to his schedule when he wants to release it. He's in Ukraine, so you can't really... don't expect something like next week or even next month, as you imagine with everything that's going on in Ukraine. There'll be times where he has different priorities.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a very very fair thing to say. Hikari Neto on YouTube is asking, is it possible to play the Battle Network arcade games on mobile?
That's gonna be a no.
Yeah, that seems, yeah.
If some genius programmer wants to take on the challenge, again, it's not that it can't be, it's just that there's no means for it currently. So if somebody wants to program that, then all the power to them.
And even me as a layman, that feels like the niche of a niche of a niche. That feels like a very like the applications would probably be like just pretty limited, I think, in terms of like just having it on your computer or something. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so the next idea comes from Packfire. Were there any unexpected discoveries or setbacks during the restoration, and how did you overcome them?
The only discovery, which was an important one, was something called a daughter board, which is a secondary board that connects to the main motherboard of the arcade. That's what the compact flash card connects to. And that was unknown, since there's literally 0 images online of what that would have been. There's barely images of BCS besides like some old 2007 pictures from Japan on Twitter that exist. Excuse me. So that discovery was a very important one, and what was great about that was that it actually used the same hardware as an Alien arcade machine. Capcom
we say
made,
Alien like the movie franchise that had a
Correct.
game.
Yeah, so like the movie franchise, Capcom made 2 Alien Medallion arcade machines, one called Alien and another called Alien Danger. BCS uses the same exact hardware as Alien. So if anyone ever finds arcade hardware for Alien, we could actually use that to get pretty close to having your home version of BCS.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Which would be cool to have.
Yeah. So keep your eyes out for Alien. keep although we know that Tofu's got the refresh going every day at work. So.
Yeah.
If there's anyone who's on it, it is certainly Tofu. We got Esco Retro from YouTube asking, Rockman EXE, the Metal Operation, are there any plans yet for how it'll be playable as a coin-only game? Really excited about this version. Keep up the good work.
I think that will happen when the sound emulation gets further along. Right now, so this BCS runs on what was previously only a medallion, like a coin pusher type arcade machine. And since they were only arcade pushers, the desire to fully emulate the functionality wasn't there, because who's going to play a coin pusher on MAME on a computer, right?
Yeah.
So this is the first and only actual game that was released for that hardware. So that still needs to be, as far as putting in coins, the buttons, and all that.
I'm sorry. I just want to clarify for my own knowledge here. So, and again, for people who may not know, the Metal Operation is literally, it's just like a Chuck E. Cheese or Shakey's. Like, you put in arcade tokens, it shoots out. There's a crane or a shovel that's pushing them, and presumably the more that they get pushed down, there's some sort of tickets or prizes, and then there are mini games that happen on the monitor while this is happening. And again, just to clarify, because I heard it wrong. Are you saying that Metal Operation is one of the few or only coin pusher games that have like an actual game, like mini game component to it, or it's unique in that way, or?
No, not so. All of the they're called Capcom Medusalon games. They're all coin pushers with mini games. But because their base premise is a coin pusher, there was zero interest in fully emulating the functionality.
That makes sense, yeah, because you're never going to fully recapture that, regardless of how you preserve it.
Because there's an element of randomness to it.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, sorry, continue.
No. Again, I get excited when I, because I'm just a silly boy, but I get excited like thinking about maybe I don't know, like some way to emulate, like you hit a button and the coin shoots out. It's like, and that requires like a lot, because that's like very add-on, right? And I know you've talked a lot about the ethos of some of these individuals who are very skilled, just kind of in terms of like keeping it really like authentic, or sort of keeping the purity of it there, where it's like it gets kind of murkier when you're like adding on something that's
that's the thing about it. So there was never much interest in their side to fully 100% emulate this arcade machine, because they were ultimately coin pushers. So BCS is the only actual arcade video game that runs on this hardware.
Wow.
So they'll need more time to emulate the functionality of pushing buttons to do XYZ thing.
Wow. That's pretty fascinating.
So they were pretty excited to learn that there was an actual video game on this hardware too.
Yeah, because again, I don't know the scope of Japanese arcade machines or coin pushers, but certainly from my limited perspective, it would seem like most coin pushers are pretty simple. That it's that the bulk of the game is timing when you put in the coin and seeing how that would land or how it would affect things. So yeah, that's pretty fascinating. HXC is asking, for those of us who are unaware, What's the current progress on the preservation effort? Now, I know you've talked a lot in general this stream on that subject with Tofu, but I guess you know, you can go as deep or as simple as you'd like with that. You know, what's the current progress on preservation?
So I mean, ultimately, the out 60% of the job, or the most important part of the job for the preservation, is having data, and that's done. We have the data. As far as emulation goes, it's a guy in Ukraine who is pretty much the guy on the earth for emulating it. He's working on it. He's already has it to a point where it boots up, and that's how we have some images of it booting up in an emulator. Some of the data has been extracted, but he lives in Ukraine, and there's a lot of strife going on in Ukraine. So it's entirely up to his schedule and his safety. When the emulator that it runs on will be updated is also entirely up to that on his schedule. I have no say, and I'm certainly not going to push him in any means to do so either. And with good reason, but these guys, if you kind of like try to push them along, they'll lose interest because they're not looking to be
pushed,
badgered constantly, right? So
no, that makes sense. There's certainly an element of diplomacy, right? An element of like, and maybe gratitude in a way too, where it's like, hey, like you are somebody, you know, who is very skilled. There's not a lot of people like you. Your time is very important. You know, we appreciate what you're doing. Yeah, I'm sure there's that's a whole thing in itself. Okay, so we talked about mobile. I saw some questions about that. Let's see. Reading data. Give me just a second. I felt like there was another question. Okay, Cito's asking, has AI usage been implemented in restoring or programming arcade machines?
Not that I'm aware, and I don't think AI is at a level to be able to help with that either. All the hardware is so incredibly specific that there wouldn't really be a way for AI to be aware of what to do.
Makes sense, yeah. Shiny Volp asks, do you happen to know the name of the Alien arcade machines that share the hardware?
It's literally just called Alien. That's all they named it. The hardware it runs on is called Medusalon. I'll type it into chat.
I've seen that get used a lot. I've always called it Metallusion. So like, yeah,
I don't know how to say it. That's how I just.
Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Metallusion, yeah. Metallusion's probably more accurate, honestly.
I kind of like Medusalon, but
literally Alien. There's two Alien machines. The other one is called Alien Danger. That one uses similar but still different hardware.
So
the one that's
Alien.
Just Alien uses the same hardware.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. I love that. Okay, so I guess at the moment, again, if you have more questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, everybody. Since we're kind of caught up in that way. I guess Tofu. Oh boy, I don't know if I should say this right now because this is like. I mean, I'll just say this: there is a potential for a third arcade machine.
Right.
that is in Japan. There's a potential for it, and I wonder, you know, what you think the steps, like a step-by-step process, like what you think are all the steps that would be needed to preserve a third and very exciting Mega Man arcade machine. I would imagine, you know, obviously a native Japanese speaker, you know, somebody to go and visit and determine if the machine is there and blah blah blah. But what would you think are the sort of things that would be necessary for something like that?
Well, this one's gonna be tough. I think for let's start with emulation, right? I think that actually won't be a problem because it
seems like a straightforward game, right? It doesn't seem like there's coin pushing or battle chip inserting.
It's an actual game. The hardware that it runs on, there's a lot of other games that run on the exact same hardware. It's actually was a pretty widely used base system for a lot of kids games. And that one isn't going to have anything fancy like compact flash adapters or anything like that. I will just need something like this hobbyist level programmer, and I'll be able to just read the chips, download the data, and that'll be that. So if we have it in hand, easy peasy. The very difficult part would be getting our hands on it because I was able to find, again, through digging through Japanese Google and through completely Japanese sites, a list of places where people said, hey, this place has this arcade machine, this place has this arcade machine. And there was a very, very short list of Mega Man related arcade machines. And one of them was this third arcade. But the wild part about that was, in 2016, Proto Dude made an announcement on Twitter that this machine had been found at X location, and now here in 2023, somebody I know happened to be visiting Japan in that general area at the time, was able to visit one of these places that said it had Mega Man, and it turned out to be the third arcade. But the weird part was it was the exact same machine that Proto Dude had pictures of from 2016. So between then and now, it's moved locations, which means maybe it's a rental, and maybe it won't be at this one spot forever. So the sooner we're able to get somebody there or get ourselves there, the better.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with you. Obviously, when it comes to rare relics, when it comes to things that you just don't see that often, I feel like it's certainly better to like strike while the iron is hot, or sort of like, you know, make those leads happen sooner than later. And actually, this is very related to the next question that I saw, which has to do with budget. I can speak about that because I was stingy in some ways.
Which is fine. Which is good.
I was about to say, and thank you for saying that, because in all honesty, you know, all of this money, like none of it is going to my pocket. Like all of this is very much related to like pursuing these arcade machines, you know, making, you know, the data preservation happen and things of that nature. So to tell everybody, just, I guess this is just the sort of, you know, as it stands at the moment, because of course maybe Tofu finds a new purchase that's necessary to this or whatever, but as it stands, we've spent about $5,000 and we have about $3,000 left over. That's still like a pretty nice little nest egg that can be built upon. And, you know, again, I don't want to, you know, what's the word? I don't want to like necessarily like shoehorn myself into something else, but I will say I myself am very excited about the potential of a third machine. You know, we have a good chunk of change. I'm very happy to do another round of fundraising. Like I have a similar feeling of like the sooner the better. So I'm very much on board with it. And I guess it would really just kind of come down to like, you know, finding, you know, a native speaker, you know, to sort of like communicate the idea of purchasing it, because I'm sure we'd have to purchase it, right? I'm sure it seems very unlikely to me that, you know, a store owner would say, hey, you know, rent this for a little bit, or, you know, whatever. It seems like it would basically need to be purchased. So it's like, what would that cost? Is that even available? Like, these are the sorts of things that I think about a lot. But just to throw that out there, if we can make that happen, like,
the additional
we'll sprint's over. You know?
The additional difficulty would be also that it's unfortunately not in the near the more popular traveled spots of like Tokyo or Osaka or anything like that. It's actually, so Japan's like a long stripped island with a little bit of a curve. It's at the bottom end of that curve, like practically at the edge of Japan. So it's I know some amount of people that live in Japan. None of them.
But you're saying it'd be like a hassle to actually like visit it, to confirm.
Yeah, even to get there, it's going to be even after landing in Japan, it'll be another mission to get to that spot if it's still there.
Wow. So you want to talk about, you know, additional hurdles, right? It's like, one, to actually just to even say hello to somebody out there, you know, is difficult. Let alone, you know, hi, are you interested in selling this?
Yeah.
You know, then it's like, how do you, if it's already in the middle of nowhere, it's like literally taking this machine. It's like, how do you transport that? Like that's, and honestly, again, my feeling is like, I'm very gung ho, you know, it's like, I'm like, let's make that happen. I would imagine that budget would need to be pretty significant, you know, just to purchase it, to actually like, you know, ship it. But, you know, the feeling is very much there. I think, it just has to, right? It's just one of those things where it's like, it's out there and we know where it is. But yeah, the idea of that I think is really exciting. Yeah, I don't know. Just wanted to put that out there.
It'd be awesome if we can go ahead and get the trifecta.
Now, right? And I saw people in chat had a similar reaction. When I first heard about this, I was like, I really just thought it was the two. I really just thought it was, the metal
Mm-hmm.
operation, and it was the Battleship Stadium. So, the idea of a third out there is really cool. It seems like a Mario Party kind of game. It seems like it's almost like a
Yeah.
board game moving on a board game.
It's pretty similar to a board game.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, super cool. Yeah. So I guess in that regard. Yeah, and I guess I wonder too, because I know we've spoken about the sort of culture of Japan, being a little bit more like hesitant, like when it comes to like emulation. So I almost wonder if like, if you would really need like a true native to ask the question, if like the idea of like, foreigners coming in and purchasing this, like I wonder if that would be like, something that would, maybe dissuade them in a way.
I want to say probably need somebody who at least speaks the language natively to communicate with whoever the operator is. Just because in more touristy areas it's fine, but in the rest of Japan, not to say that I won't call them racist, but to just have some foreigners just kind of barge it and say, "Hey, sell us that thing," right?
I could totally see that being a turnoff, right? That could, no, I could absolutely see that being the case. Yeah. So additional challenges, but I mean, again, speaking from personal level, challenges that I'm willing to sort of, try our hand at, right?
Challenges to be overcome.
Exactly. That's exactly the mentality. I love it. All right. Catching up on a few other questions. We've got Poca Joe asking, what are you most excited to see come out of this game in archive?
Honestly, if the 3D models, when the 3D models are available, I think that'd be really cool. As crappy as they look, I'll say as wonky as they look. I still think it's fascinating that there's a real arcade machine to be played with these, and so to see the models come out and what people do with them, maybe some YouTube poops or something like that, would be pretty amusing.
Yeah,
or even VR, use them as VR chat models. That'd be pretty funny.
Oh, they'd be the most cursed things you've ever seen. I love it. Yeah, that would be. I don't know how much you got to see of them really, Tofu, but like you got like Charge Man jumping up in the air. You got everyone doing their Kamehameha. It's like it's great. In fact, I actually kind of wonder. Do we know the developer? I don't think it was an in-house Capcom, right? I'm sure there was some third party.
No, definitely wasn't in-house Capcom, but I don't know. There's no record that I have found of who developed it. Maybe there's something sitting in the data, but other than that, not too sure.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay, Pakfar is asking. I'm sorry. I see a pretty live question. People are asking, did the game actually use models? People assume they were pre-rendered. I can't speak to that. I have no idea.
I think the videos that you see, obviously, definitely pre-rendered.
For sure, the cutscene animations, yeah.
The ones that are used in the game, though, they're either models. The only other thing could possibly be, you can think of back to Mortal Kombat, how you had like digitized model that they manipulated. That's a possibility, but I think that's less likely.
Yeah, than
it being an actual model that's used.
Yeah, especially I would agree. Okay, Pakfar is asking, what role do you think projects like this play in preserving gaming history and culture? Are there any plans to release? Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I can answer the second part of this question, Pakfar. Is like I personally we have a lot of footage, and I've been very hard at work splicing together the story of it and making a documentary of it. Now, a detailed behind the scenes look at the restoration process. That's like outside of my scope. We have it probably is possible actually, maybe if Tofu were to help oversee that a little bit, if I send him footage or something, it's possible to see more of an in-depth look at the restoration. But the earlier question, what role do you think projects like this play in preserving gaming history and culture? What's your opinion on that, Tofu?
I think for that in general, I mean, this game was considered like you'll never find it. Good luck in the most sarcastic way. I think it'll encourage others to say, even if it seems impossible to find an arcade machine, if you really devote the time, and it is a lot of time, but if you devote the time, some way, somehow, you'll find it. Somebody will have it somewhere, or it'll be sitting in some unknown place somewhere, abandoned, and somebody asks about it online. And since you keep yourself up to date, you're like, oh, I've been looking for that for like a decade.
Or in a different country, right?
Yeah.
Like how I think that's almost one of the funnier things. Like when I tell the story to people, they're always like, "Wait, this Japanese machine was in France." It's like, yeah. Like that's just how it is. That's just you never know, right? Life is really funny like that. And I think you're right. I mean, if you think about the sheer like willpower, like this is from a personal perspective. I remember going to Protodude's website, as a kid. The internet was not as great as it was. And just like reading about this like Japanese machine and being like, wow, like that's so cool. Like I would love, I've always had that little seed in my head of like, wow, like, to use battle chips in a machine, like, and save your data and like, level up your elect man.
It's
like,
really cool to even think about. It's cool.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like and look at us, like almost 20 years later, right? Like, and that's just what it takes. It takes that sort of like, that laser focus, which again, I'm going to give Tofu another huge compliment. I wish that I could be laser focused. I'm just like, I'm not as skilled. I don't know like the sort of like verbiage and the things that are necessary, but I can tell you there is no better person for a project like this than Tofu, because
thank you.
Not only do you have the skills, but like the drive is so intense, in the most positive way, because you're out there refreshing every day, like finding those Capcom, boards, reaching out to people, like figuring out the sort of community, like networking and having conversation. Like this was news to me that like the gentleman is in Ukraine. Like, that's so cool. I love that. And, I think like that just, it says a lot about you as a person to like really, have that very, burning desire to make that happen. I think it's just, that's necessary for something like this. So huge compliment to you, my friend.
The same for you. And where like, I have very wide technical knowledge and I know how to talk to technical people. But we need other people who have different personalities, and you have a lot more showmanship than I will ever have. To be able to really get that word out there and to get people really excited for it. Because I can say like, hey, I found a arcade machine, I'd like to go dump it. Whereas you can really rally the people together in order to come together for an event like this. Yeah. And to pool everybody's resource together to make it happen.
Thank you. And I will say that I have like every day, it's been like almost, I think maybe it's been 10 days or so since we came back. Basically every day I've just been poring over the footage, like making cuts, making it like really trying my best to make it like a really great experience, because I think it was a trip unlike anything else, really. It was very, very cool. So Shiny Volp is asking, Demi and Tofu, did you guys get to play the machines before the tinkering began? And I'm going to jump in because this is actually a question I can answer. We did. Yes and no, I guess, is probably the best way to answer that. So the Battle Chip Stadium machine, the one that of course uses, the real life battle chips, in perfectly working condition. In fact, actually, this is the first time we get to say this. Amazing news. It was version 3. It was the most complete version of the game that you could expect. So, if you think about arcade machines where, I guess you could almost think of it like DLC, like new content gets added every now and then, with the Battleship Stadium, there was version 1 that had the sort of baseline characters. And then I believe, I could be wrong here, but I believe version 2 introduced like Dark Proto Man and maybe Dark Mega Man and things like that. And version 3 had like a few other extra characters. What a blessing that like this is truly the most complete version. Yep, absolutely Beast Base being a huge part of it. What a blessing that it was like the best version possible. So yeah, we did get to play it. It was super cool. In fact, again, I might even make like a shorter video like in the meantime, in the sort of interim before the documentary, like because I did get I probably got to spend like a good 30 minutes to an hour just playing it and figuring it out, so I could do like a quote unquote review of sorts, or maybe like a step-by-step kind of guide to it, which I'm definitely going to do. Now the unfortunate thing is the metal operation machine, the coin pusher. That was not, well, it was functional in that lights would turn on and the sort of the shovel would move and the flippers would move, but it was not functional in the sense of no monitor. The monitor was not turning on. There was no visuals, and there was no audio either. So, actually, a bit of a side, like a side plot or a subplot that we had was trying to find a CRT in France that could read, which was gang, I hope I can capture the humor of this really well in the documentary, because it's like, you have to imagine, like, we are not native language speakers. You know, we're basically on like Facebook Marketplace and like the Craigslist equivalent, like trying to find old CRTs. Like, think about the first, like, CRTs are so hard to find, like good functioning CRTs, like out here in America, let alone like in a totally foreign language that's, you know, or in a foreign country that's, you know, a lot smaller than us. You know, it's a whole thing, right? So we did find a CRT. Spoilers, the CRT we found was not quite compatible. If there, I think Tofu was saying.
I could make a jump in there.
Yeah, cut in. Yeah.
So we found an LCD.
Right.
The LCD that we found had a chance. Let me backtrack on that a little bit. So the arcade machine, right? It runs. The video that it puts out is VGA based, so 90s, early 2000s tech. But it does so at a very specific type of, I'll say frequency to make it easy to understand. Specific resolution and frequency combined. CRTs can read that perfectly, no problem. And since the LCD on metal operation wasn't working, or wasn't getting the command to turn on, you could hook up a CRT and just see what error message the arcade machine was putting out, so then I could know where the trouble was. Because as far as I could tell, the motherboard itself was fine, and some auxiliary parts were fine, so something else in the cog wasn't turning. We found an LCD that had a 50-50 chance of being compatible with those signals. It unfortunately turned out not to be compatible. But I mean, having less than we had like 5 hours to try and find something in a foreign country, in what is kind of like the mountains of that country, it wasn't really a high chance we were going to find it.
No, certainly not. And you're right. I apologize. A CRT would have been perfect. We unfortunately had a backdoor and find VGA compatible monitors that, you know, unfortunately were not quite the frequency or the you know, the sort of capabilities that we needed. But yeah, the idea of it was certainly there. We were you know, we did the best we could, I think, with what was given to us in that regard.
Yeah. It was still fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So with that being said, we did get to play the BCS. Did not really get to play on the metal operation, but the silver lining is that even though the monitor and the sound were not working, the motherboard itself seemed perfectly intact. Tofu was able to extract the data that was necessary. So still a mission accomplished. Obviously, it would have been nice for us to see the footage ourselves, and also just to help fix it for Emmanuel, who really, hats off to him again, just like did not charge anything, was so gracious. You know, there was even a time like his family like sat down. We had a French lunch with them. It was like,
that was great.
It's just so hospitable. Just a really great experience. So, yeah, we did the best we could with what was around.
I'd say Miller in France much better than the not great beer that we have here in America. I don't enjoy it. I'll say that here. Over there, it was actually pretty nice.
Yeah, no, a lot of quality, in fact, actually, this is totally off topic. What was your take on French McDonald's? Did you notice anything particularly great or different or anything? Did it seem the same to you?
Yeah,
or did it seem like exotic in a way.
Fries and nuggets the same.
Okay.
They have this thing called the Royal Burger, which literally just tastes like Burger King burger.
Like
honestly,
charbroiled or like
yeah, like a flame grilled, a char, whatever. It tastes what I would say is a Burger King burger. It tastes exactly the same. So I was kind of weirded out by that. We got a curry dipping sauce, which I thought was amazing. I actually wish they sold that here. I would love more of that. The barbecue tastes more. Not. I was gonna say mystique. That's not right. It starts with an M. The word I'm looking for. No,
musty is not the right word. Tastes more mustardy. Tastes more.
It's got that guy. He's got it.
Mesquite.
Yeah,
this
so
is a
it
word
tastes
I've
more
heard
like
of. I don't
that.
know what is it? I actually don't necessarily know what mesquite means.
I don't know how to define that actually.
Okay, I'll have to look it up.
That's a good question. I've always just kind of known.
It's just a flavor. It's a flavor profile. Sounds good.
Just,
and how could you explain
that.
a flavor? Yeah, that's tough. Oh, smokier is what people.
Yeah, and the sweet and sour was more sweet than sour, whereas in America it's more sour than sweet.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. Okay, so Gate09 asked me, when's the documentary coming out? Hard to answer. And honestly, I have to, from my perspective, I have to know when to cut it off. Because, like, even in this conversation, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I should try to reach out to Ukraine. You know, what's the Ukraine guy got to say? And it's like, no. Like, that's maybe a post separate thing. Like, let's stick to what we have. Like, let's get a cool quality thing out there. And frankly, like, from maybe like a more like, I don't know, strategic kind of perspective, I would love to have it out by the end of the year to have a really great, exciting thing for fans to get excited about. Because to be honest with you, we're probably going to do another round of fundraising for this third, chip machine, right? This third machine to really make sure that goes well. And like, I would feel very uncomfortable doing it without showing people what this finished product and like, has kind of looked like, and also showing people how I budgeted. Because again, maybe I was too stingy in certain ways, but I'm really like trying my best to like make sure. Because in the back of my mind, gang, I'm getting kind of off topic here. In the back of my mind, I was like, if this machine breaks, we need to compensate them. It was like, I would feel so, if we're out here in like 3-star hotels or whatever, sipping our, French margaritas, and it's like, oh, the machine broke, like, oh boy, like, okay, well, sorry, don't know what to tell you. No, I was very much the opposite, but probably to a fault. I think there's probably a better.
No, I think it was fine. I think it was
okay.
Good.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I don't know. I thought it was, yeah. Again, I think always good to always better to err on the side of caution than to not. But anyway, it seems like, oh yes, actually this is a comment from Shattered Shamrock, not a question. Kind of insane how much progress we've made in the hunt to find lost EXE media in just this year alone. What's your take on that, Shattered or Tofu?
I mean, I'm gonna toot my own horn this time, and say that I was the one who found the Pan and Lan. Found somebody who I gave them the instructions. On how to still get the games like a year or two before they officially went off the air, and then we were able to get that phone over to the States. And now we're going through a process of being able to hack. The company's called Docomo, so hack the Docomo phones in general, and working our way to this one to do it in a safe way where we could just pull the data off and preserve that phone the way it is to return it back to its owner. To
chime in really quick. So for folks who may not actually realize this, there are 2 mobile games. Obviously, they were Japanese only. And when I say mobile games, I'm talking like flip phone. I'm talking like pre-smartphone era Mega Man, Battle Network, Rockman EXE video games. I think it's Phantom of Network and
Legend of Network.
Legend of Network. Okay, these are the 2 games. And again, this toot your horn, my friend, because you need to actually like to find the cell phones, right? Because you need to have the cell phone. Ship it over. That's a labor in itself, and that's something again that it almost feels like a goose chase in a way, or maybe it felt like that years ago until you managed to secure that. So yes, toot your horn, my friend. That's massive, and to know what to do with it, right? It's one thing to find the phones, and another thing to know how to go about extracting that. Yeah.
Yes, I mean that was I did the process of again going through Japanese Google and through Japanese websites. And everything, and figuring out like these games are still purchasable at that time. Currently you cannot buy them anymore. They are off the air. The cell phone companies won't even let you register a flip phone any longer. So if you had hopes for doing that, it's not possible. At that time, it was. I did the research on what phone would it be best to have this on. Where if an event where it's just straight up impossible to ever dump it. Could we still get a recording of it, a clean recording? So this phone has HDMI out, so that if, as a final resort, we could just record all the gameplay. So finding the phone that's compatible, finding that it's still accessible, what plan exactly do you have to use, how to go to the Docomo people and say, yes, I still want to use the flip phone in 2019. So
Yeah.
it was a whole process, whole ordeal. Finding someone in Japan who was willing to then go through that entire process as well, since you have to be a Japanese citizen, you have to have a Japanese bank, everything related to it, you have to be Japanese in order for it to get done. So it was a lot of that was also collaboration, but I think I can confidently say, had I not gone through that step, we wouldn't be here with the pawn and line at all.
Oh, 1000%, 1000%. No, toot your horn, my friend. That's I think like it's I think again, maybe this is too optimistic, but I think by 2024 it's possible we will have found and archived every lost media, like when it comes to the Battle Network games, right? I can't think of anything else that's outstanding. This third arcade machine, and then like I'm gonna knock on wood, but the third arcade machine, and then like the 2 cell phone games. Is there anything missing?
So I'm gonna answer this in reverse. There isn't anything missing, but there is a third cell phone game, actually. So, but don't get too excited about that one. Honestly, that third cell phone game was like a versus game, so you could verse other people. I forget what the name is, but the same guy who I had get those Pun and Lawn games just so happened to have another cell phone with that third game, and that phone is actually dumpable currently. So I'm working with him to teach him the process so that we can get that saved.
Wow. Okay, so thankfully you've located it. That's like
everything, every missing game, I guess besides the third arcade machine, is in a Mega Man fan's hands.
Tofu, you just like, it's so funny how casually you can blow my mind, because it's like I legitimately, again, it's something about like Hanepon and then like the Metal Operation and BCS. It's like they're all secretly trifectas. It's amazing. I've always thought of them as duos, but wow. Okay, well that's cool. So it's all we're still hitting all the dots, all the darts.
Yeah, we're still getting everything.
Yeah, that's really great. Okay, so Fernando Zarate is asking, was the backup of the ROM difficult? We've kind of covered that, I think, but what would you?
I mean, ultimately, thanks to being able to speak with persons who have worked on similar machines, them teaching me the process, and us being able to get a hand of similar hardware, it didn't turn out to be that difficult. Awesome. At the end of the day.
Amazing, and what a blessing. Dashy Swag's asking, once emulation is complete and stable, are there plans to translate to English?
That, I would say yes. I could see Prof 9 probably taking up the mantle for that. I'm very strictly a hardware guy. The programming that I know has to deal with the chips that's on said hardware. So software-wise, things like programming models, translating, things like that. I've dipped my toes in it, but don't look to me to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Trez, but I would imagine they would have some interest in something like, because considering they're the team that's localized, 4.5 and EXE6 Plus, like before, we had the complete version of it in the Legacy Collection, because of course there was a lot of Japanese content that we never got in the States. So again, I don't want to speak for them, but I would imagine they have some sort of interest in that. But yeah, that would have to be a totally different endeavor, I would imagine. Let me see. TJ09 is saying, I enjoy that Tofu's making his explanations accessible. Is there any place to read the more technical details for those who know?
For BCS particularly, no. The only resource that even says anything about BCS has incorrect information. But if you want to learn about arcade hardware in general, a term, when I was referencing things like the CRT signals and whatever, if you want a more technical term to look up, you can look up arcade, RGB, 15 kilohertz, things along those lines. Format called JAMA, JAMMA. That's a kind of connection standard that BCS doesn't use, but if you're going to understand things about arcade, you need to understand JAMA. But yeah, for the compact flash card, you could go to an arcade website called project-arcade.com, and there's a wealth of knowledge in there.
Awesome.
If
Yeah.
anything, maybe I'll link it real quick. Is
Yeah.
that all right if I can link that?
Oh, of course. Go for it. No, absolutely, you could. In fact, I would imagine, in fact, maybe I'm sure I'll take the VOD of this on YouTube. I'll probably even have a little link for that as well, which seems really, really great.
All right, that's the website.
Oh yeah, very, 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 very good stuff. Yeah, and I see Rockman Cosmo chiming in to say, along with the 2 EXE games, there's also the Rockman Dash Great Adventure on 5 Islands, which of course is the Mega Man Legends equivalent of like a.
Is it alright if I give some breaking news?
Of course, yeah. Share some breaking news. What is it?
So let me keep names. I'm not even going to allude to who messaged me this, but they said that with some monetary encouragement, they think it's actually going to be possible to reverse engineer that sound chip.
Really?
Which is again, like I alluded to this earlier, but I think one of the biggest hurdles for getting the game fully emulated and having that interest really there is having the sound emulated, because sound is such a core component to video games in general. So I guess with me, you, and the other persons involved in this project, let's give that a further discussion later on. But
I was about to say, probably privately, but yeah, I mean, again, we have the budget for exactly this, right? So, oh my gosh, did someone just give some subs? Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I missed. I was busy, enamored with the breaking news. But thank you very much to that. I'll scroll down and take a peek in a little bit, but a big salute to. I mean, and actually, I'm gonna take a second to thank all of you in chat, truly, because, as cool as a thing as this is, like as amazing as this sort of like project has been, it would not have been possible without you contributing, watching, being a part of the fundraiser, even just like passively being interested and just sort of spreading the word and sharing the news. I mean, really, I think that the Battle Network community has a very passionate group of people. I think this has been an amazing year with the Legacy Collection, and I think, I'm really grateful to all of you, truly. And actually, I need to take a second, too, to shout out Neto Hikari and DJ Enzan as well for all of their work in terms of, establishing connections. I don't know who was the first person to reconnect with Emmanuel. I know he's been sort of hit up over the years, to various degrees. I don't know who was directly responsible for, the reconnection of this year, but they were integral, just the best. I would assume it was DJ Rez Enzan. Yeah, no, I see it in the chat right now. You deserve an amazing, just a huge round of applause, for establishing that again, because truly, that's because we've known forever, right? Obviously, he's had the YouTube footage in the past, and the more I think about it, it's like, how would I react if I, were in a, people were reaching out to me over my priceless relic, I don't know, trying to buy it would probably be how it was, and it's
I'll be honest, I did try to years ago. I said, "Hey, how much do you want for it?" Probably wasn't the best approach.
Well, I feel you though, right? Because it's no, it makes sense. It's not like it doesn't make sense, but it's funny. Now in retrospect, it's okay, how do you this is not even your first language. This is a second language. The fear of it breaking, who are these people, right? I think, we've come such a long way, just as a community, right? Just people like you, Tofu, you've had years of just, doing amazing work. So you're not just a random person when you reach out to Emmanuel. It's oh, no. I made these dip chips, I've been a large part of, mobile game preservation and all this great stuff. I'm an expert in this field. You can trust me. When I say that we're going to come in and it's going to be a professional job, nothing is going to get broken. You can trust me. And again, to his credit, I wish you were here right now. He was so, calm and patient, and, was never, I mean, he was definitely sweating bullets, and I don't blame him. But who wouldn't?
He was nervous. Be? Understandably nervous. I would be too. I mean, I was.
Be nervous. Weren't we all, though? Honestly, weren't we all? But not hawking over or, denying certain things. He was extremely just the best. He really was, which I think is just so cool. Again, huge shout out to him. Shout out to everybody. Thankfully, what amazing stuff. Okay, let me just keep scrolling down here. Gator Knight's asking where it's going to be archived. That's a great question. I would assume like a
Uh,
Dropbox or a Google Drive. I don't. How do people go about that?
Well, I'm not too sure how it works with MAME. For our
Great
part,
question.
we'll probably make it available through just a link. Again,
Yeah.
just the raw source files, not like there. It might need some modification in order to run in the emulator application. I'm not entirely sure yet about that. But as far as our part goes, just having the raw rip of the data, it'll just be like a Dropbox, not Dropbox kind of link, essentially. Like probably not guaranteed, but maybe something like MediaFire, just an easily accessible link that if I drop off the face of the earth one day, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
Because it's not like they'll close the MediaFire account. Those things just stay open forever.
That's a good point, because like a Google Drive or Dropbox, maybe in theory, with enough time, if there's inactivity, you never know. But yeah, that's an interesting thought. Wow. Also, I'm going to take a quick second to shout out Kokoji. Thank you very much for the raid, and Omega. Thank you very much for the reset. Oh gosh. Okay. Wow. I spoke. Okay. And he just Omega. Thank you so much. Holy cow. Thank you for gift subs. That's so sweet of you. Another question that we see right now, Shadow Shamrock is asking, is there a preservation society for arcades?
So that website I linked, Arcade Projects, has a lot of interest in Capcom. A couple of different companies, but they're interested in a couple of specific arcades particularly. But they're like very into it, so they have a ton of resources for that. And then just MAME, MAME in general. There's another site that I could probably MAME World is another site that the name in it is MAME, but they cover all arcade machines and they're interested in preserving all that.
Love that. Yeah, love to hear it, because I think, I don't know, I feel like arcade machines in particular are such like a unique and kind of scary thing, because I think traditional video games are a lot easier to preserve, right? I don't know how difficult it was, for example, to preserve the entire DS online store. It was probably difficult in some ways, but I feel like to have real hardware that like you have to physically travel, right? It's like you have to actually like go and see this thing and like rip it yourself. Like there's so and let alone tracking it down. Maybe there's no more left, right? Like there's so many additional variables that kind of come in that make it like so scary. So I think you would hope that there would be like a really solid group of people, and it seems like there definitely is. It's great to hear about all of that, really. Yeah, really, really cool stuff. Mega says, if he recalls correctly, MAME was contacted during the attempt to figure out dumping it. They were unable to lend a hand for one reason or another. I can't remember the details too well. I don't know. I can't speak to that.
It came down to that the persons I had contacted had some familiarity, and they gave me some tools, but it wasn't didn't turn out. Let me say, like, they were helpful in what they could help with. They did not turn out to have the complete story, which is fine. They got me on the right track and got me to some other persons. But the thing that they weren't able to do that we initially had pitched to them was if they could send one of their guys who might have lived somewhere close in Europe to go over initially, but they said that they didn't have the bandwidth for that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we had a fun trip.
Yeah.
It all worked out.
I'm not going to complain about it. It was awesome to do it myself and meet other people in the community, especially Emmanuel and Demi.
Oh, man. No, couldn't agree more. Same to you, my friend. Okay, well, I'll say this. It's been almost 3 hours now. So I guess if there's anyone else in chat who has got some last, burning questions or thoughts, we can maybe go for them now. While I'm waiting on that, of course, we said thank you to every single person who's involved. Again, for people who are maybe popping in a little bit later, who have missed a lot of what we talked about, there's so many exciting things that are happening. People are working on sounds. In fact, that was breaking news today that, that there are people who can work on, extracting the sound files, which I'm excited about, because I feel like we heard some interesting mixes of songs. I feel like there were some random, I can't even pinpoint in my head like what some of them like aquarium PCs and stuff. Like there were some really like esoteric BN6 tracks that were on the arcade machine that I think I'm excited to hear which is, yeah, again, super, super cool. And yeah, I mean, I guess just to sort of summarize it to the best that I can, mission accomplished in terms of getting the data, making sure it did not break, making sure that, things were smooth overall. Even if it was a quote unquote, bad dump in terms of like MAME, categories, it seems like
completely
for all intents,
technicality.
Yep, for all intents and purposes, a totally solid, amazing dump. Yeah, I guess how else would you elaborate on that? So if you had to talk about the sort of like the bullet points of like what went well and what's coming up.
What went well was dumping it, which is the important part. Putting it back together. The fact that we got to complete that, Emmanuel let us completely tear it down too, to where I took the face plates off in order to get pictures of the battle chip readers was great. And what's coming up is now it seems the sound emulation, which if there's sound emulation, then controls emulation comes next. Because I mean, once you start,
is that related? Are they?
It's not. No, it's not related. But just the fact that it's the human psyche, right? You see something start to work, and you get motivated to make it work even more, kind of thing, right? So in terms of that is just basically once sound is working, there's more incentive to bring even more of the other aspects of the game working, and then get it to a playable state, like a completely playable state. So I think that here it's definitely a hold your breath kind of situation where you could where you can expect something.
So excited to hear that. And again, the potential for a third machine, who knows when we'll start making those wheels turn, but that is certainly something that I think is a pressing thing on both of our minds for sure, which I think is just riveting. Different challenges, very different challenges. Which it's funny how it's like swapped, where it's like it seems like the hardware architecture very basic, very simple, very straightforward, but then like actually like putting your hands on it is going to be.
I'm going to say difficult. The hardest part of the entire trip was readjusting to the regular sleep schedule last week after coming back from France, because I got home Sunday and I don't have any more days off for work, so I immediately had to go back into the normal schedule of work and everything, and I was just non-existent all of last week essentially.
My friend, I think I consistently got like 4 hours of sleep on these like nap intervals. It was I felt like I was what was it, Thomas Edison or something with his crazy like sleep schedules. I felt like I was just trying my best. And then actually, this is kind of Dear Diary, but I live on the West Coast and I traveled to the East Coast for a wedding, and it was like, just keep muddying the pot. Let's just keep stirring it up for absolutely no reason. So I think last night was actually the first time I went to bed at a reasonable time and got a reasonable amount of sleep. So I'm excited about that. Really great stuff. We've got Yuki asking, can I get a raise?
Probably.
That was a very charitable answer.
He works for me, so.
I love that. It's like a little Christmas bonus for Yuki. Love it. Rockman Cosmo, pressing question. Tofu, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Sick. That not surprising.
It was my favorite color before Mega Man. I will say that.
Nice. You were an OG Blue fan. Blue stocks are going up. Yeah, I love that. I think that is going to be it in terms of questions. So again, I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you for listening, for asking great questions. Thank you for your interest. Thank you again for your support. It truly, this was not something possible without the help of the Battle Network community who cares, right? If this were a community of people who went, oh, whatever, an arcade machine, like if there were no excitement there, talk about a very difficult sort of set of challenges to face, but with, a community that's so excited about the prospects of things like that, I think, anything is possible. Another shout out again, DJ Rest, reopening that conversation with Emmanuel and actually, DJ Rest, you do a great job as well, just to toot your horn a little bit, of like breaking down some of the more technical stuff that I have a hard time kind of wrapping my head around. Thanks to all of you who are a part of this. Thanks to Neto for running a great server like that. And again, Tofu, I know I've kind of praised you a lot throughout this entire stream, but I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. This, there's a world where you could have done this without me. It's not possible. Just straight up impossible to have done it without you. Your dedication, your drive, your set of skills, unparalleled, quite frankly. In the best way possible. I had a great time meeting you, just on a personal level. And again, I'm gonna knock on wood because you never know in Japan, right? Who knows what the circumstances will lead to? But I would be really excited for the idea of a third machine preservation. So, really great stuff. Do you have any closing thoughts yourself before we call it a night?
No. Closing. I guess I would really enjoy if we can make something to interact with battle chips through the application, or if not that, at least copy what MGBA has done, where they have a software thing where you can just there's a list of chips and pick the one from that list, and it'll load it into the game. So that's something I think that's something I would like to see, something that's probably feasible.
And is that something that you think would need financial massaging for the people who could possibly do that? Is that something you think that's the kind of
some potential, only because it falls outside of the straight up emulating the exact hardware,
the purity of it, right? The sort of
yeah. So, and like they like challenges. They're not opposed to things, but if it doesn't exactly meet what they're looking to do at that moment, sometimes you need to kind of encourage the process a bit.
Well, and I'll say this too. You're the one having that conversation. I feel like I'd just feel like a monkey in the room or something if I were to squeeze my way in there. But full permission as far as I'm concerned. Like if you think it needs that massaging, do it, because I think that functionality would be really cool to have. I think that's something. Sure. I feel the same as you. I feel like that's something that would be really, really, really amazing. Okay, well then with that being, cool. We got one last question. Star Force games being archived. I know they're pretty new. I don't think there are any Star Force arcade machines, are there?
There is a Star Force home TV game, like those Atari joystick games that you'd put out. You got one on the shelf?
I know.
Yeah, so that guy. So I've got one.
Does this need preserving? Okay, I was gonna say if this needs it, I'm like, I will donate this to the cause for sure.
I have one.
Okay, sick.
So I've very unfortunately I've had it for like 2, maybe 3. I hope not 3, like 2 years already. COVID, job, other things have been so crazy that I haven't had an opportunity to sit down with it. But I have had conversations with a lot of people for the process for that. I'm already at a point where I'm pretty comfortable for the next steps to dump that data. I just need I need some time to sit down and actually do it. And it's in a backlog, but it's not like it's 20 feet down. There's just some stuff that has to get done before I get to that.
And again, I think I'm sure most of us enjoy Star Force as well, but I think some exciting stuff for Battle Network coming up, right? We got some, we can dig a little deeper, I think, as time passes. But I'm glad to hear that that's not, it might not be too difficult, or that it's, it's not something crazy.
I do have a question for chat, I suppose.
Ooh, ask away.
Related to Star Force is that I'm trying to build a database of all of these Star Force cards, the scanner cards. So is it alright if I link my Google Sheets link? It has a list of cards that I already have. If you have a card that is not in that list, if you could send me a picture, like a clear picture, so that I can decode the barcode and put it into my list, that'd be great.
Amazing. I'm sure you've talked to Seabit. He's someone who I know off the top of my head is a big fanatic for the wave cards.
I've got a lot from him and a lot from.
Do you know Gooby? Gooby has a decent amount of them too. I think. I don't know if he has more than
Gooby. I don't know who that is.
Okay, cool. Well, maybe I'll reach out to him.
Force barcodes. Okay.
To be honest with you, I actually own some myself. I doubt that I have stuff that's ultra crazy. But I guess the list will be interesting to look at.
So, all right. So yeah, that's the list. It's also the chip code list, but the very last page on that sheet is what is the all the cards that I currently have. If there's ones that exist that I'm not aware of that aren't in that list, then by all means, still show it to me. And this is obviously public information. It's available to everybody. The ultimate goal is to be able to just, since I decode them, you can run it back through a recoder program, and you can print them out yourself, and then just scan it in the scanner yourself.
Is that true of e-reader cards too? Is that
Yeah.
like a very similar...
No, not with e-reader cards. Sorry, the printing is too small and too intricate for a regular printer to handle.
You would need something pretty specialized.
Yeah, you need a special.
But the wave cards are not. You're saying the wave cards are more simple in that way?
Wave cards are simple enough that you could get away with a regular printer.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, high DPI, like Shadow Shamrock says. Awesome. Okay, folks. Well, then, I guess with that, we'll call it a night. Again, a big salute to Tofu, to everyone who's here. I'm taking a week-long break. If you guys celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a great Christmas. If you celebrate Hanukkah, if you don't celebrate anything, I hope you have a great holiday season. I am so excited to celebrate the new year coming up. I feel like 2023 was such a great year for Mega Man fans. I feel like 2024 is going to have so many new exciting things that are just on the horizon. Again, I'm going to knock on wood a little bit, but I feel like by 2024 it's possible there will be no missing gaps when it comes to lost Mega Man stuff. It's possible. I don't know. Knocking again. I'm ever the optimist, but but still exciting stuff. Thank you to all of you. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your evening, and I will catch you guys later. Peace out.
Bye, guys.
What's the general dummy operation?